That, of course, is the classic fight scene from the Star Trek Original Series episode Arena. It's when Captain Kirk first encounters the Gorn Captain. Today on Trek Wars at OSU, we're going to be talking to a couple of people who have taken this well-known and beloved episode and turned it into a live-action musical. My guests are going to be Dr. Christina Allaback and Dr. Jason Held, both of them who teach at Umpqua Community College in Roseburg, Oregon. And they are producing now in May 2021 the musical Arena Gorn Superstar. We're going to be talking to them about what inspired them to take this episode and turn it into a stage production, and not just a stage production, but a musical. We're going to talk a little bit about their inspirations for the songs and how they came about trying to think about what it would take to bring this to the stage, and also some of the challenges that they faced in a COVID era production. My name is Joseph Orosco. I'm a professor of philosophy at Oregon State University, and I'm also the co-director of the Anarres Project for Alternative Futures. The Anarres Project, of course, is a forum for conversations, projects, and initiatives that tries to imagine a future free of domination, oppression, exploitation, war, and empire. And one of the projects that we maintain is this channel, which is Trek Wars at OSU, in which we take a look at major sci-fi franchises like Star Trek and Star Wars and others to find different messages that can give us inspiration and hope for alternative futures. So let's turn and talk about what it takes to bring one of these most beloved episodes into live action theater. All right, I'm here with Christina Allaback and Jason Heald. Both of them are at Umpqua Community College in Roseburg, Oregon, and we're here to talk about their new theater production, Arena Gorn musical. Is that correct? Arena Gorn Superstar.
Yeah, Arena Gorn Superstar.
Very good. So you all have adapted this iconic classic Star Trek original series episode into a stage production. And so, Chris, you have worked for many years as one of the founders and the artistic director behind Trek Theater. Uh, and so you have experience doing this a little bit of transforming Star Trek to the stage. You've done this for many years. So I'm kind of curious, why did you all choose to take this very well-known Star Trek episode and turn it not only into a stage production, but a musical? Why'd you decide to do that?
Well, Jason had written, we had worked on Pon farr, a green-blooded musical love story together back in 2016. And we had started talking about adapting Arena for the stage like shortly after that. I think our concept was more about going out to rocky places and doing it in rocky places and traveling around, which may still happen. I don't know. Um, but I think that I just was, with COVID, I wasn't quite sure we were going to get approved. So I was just like, hey, let's throw some paperwork out there, see if administration lets us do it. I wasn't expecting them to say yes, but they did. And I think the reason why I chose it now is because it's probably one of the easiest episodes you can do with social distancing.
So, I mean, so this is a good point. You've done Star Trek musical before, right? Which was Pon farr, based on the episode, right? A Mock Time. So
Yep.
you've done this kind of work before. Um, was there anything about the storyline or the idea of Arena that caught your eye, or was it mostly just the ability to do this technically?
Well, first of all, the ability to do it technically, but I think as I've been working on it, I think the theme is actually, I think, very good for our current COVID times. It's a message of hope. It's a message of growth.
Mhm.
And for me, that's really important right now. Like, we as humanity need to take this COVID experience and grow from it and look at the hope towards the future in a post-COVID world.
So that's one of the hallmarks, of course, always been of Star Trek, right? Is that kind of hopeful vision of the future and this idea of growth and sort of awakening consciousness of bigger realities. And so, that seems appropriate. That seems like a message that people want to hear about. Um, I wonder, in thinking about trying to adapt this kind of work to the stage, particularly science fiction. I know that you've talked about this many times, Chris, but I wonder whether both of you could talk a little bit about what are the challenges of adapting television sci-fi to the stage?
Well, I guess I could probably speak a little to that in just terms of just approaching it as creating a musical. And one of the things that is both the part that makes it both easy and challenging is the fact that you have a template there that is pretty set that you have to stick with if it's going to be true to the episode. So there are a lot of decisions you don't need to make because that, and parameters are good things when it comes to sort of the creative process because you're not dealing with God, man, and the universe. You have something that's very specific. And I think in the case of Arena, that some of the parameters, the fact that it's so much time is spent with two people, things about sort of the dramatic arc of it that lent itself to becoming a musical for me because I could see very obvious places where you could develop a character through the song, some really pivotal moments through it that are really clear. And of course, the entertainment value. I mean, a singing lizard man, what could be better? Uh, and and Arena, I have to say, this is I am old enough to having seen this on TV when it first came out. It was the first Star Trek episode I ever saw, and I was like 9 years old. And so again, it's like to a 9-year-old watching this that uh, it's a battle between a spaceman and a dinosaur. What could be better for 9-year-old entertainment? But then the difficult part is that you really will have a discerning audience. Therefore, you can't blow anything by them. That simply is not going to happen. So you have to the level of precision and accuracy that you need is probably far beyond any other genre you might write for, I think.
Yeah, so there's a couple of questions I want to ask about that. I want to ask about the challenges of working with something like material that's so well known to so many people and so well beloved. But I wanted to ask you about this, Jason. You brought this up, and we've talked to Chris many times about this before in different ways. But you mentioned that you were watching the original series as a child. Have you do you consider yourself a Trekkie? Have you always been a Trekkie?
Oh, uh, a fan, sure, not a Trekkie. I would not fall into that category. And I think the other real, other than, qualification I'd have to have is that I would know all of the original episodes and very few beyond that. I've seen the movies, and so my relationship is pretty narrow by compared to anyone that would be a self-described Trekkie, I think.
Gotcha. Right. Well, so let's talk a little bit then about, as you were mentioning, this material being so well known and Trekkies being usually very, very obsessed about details. Um, I wanted to know, in some sense, the kinds of challenges that you all were thinking about as you tried to adapt something that's so well known to the work that you do. For instance, I know that Trek theater in the past has really played with convention in some of the productions that you did before, Chris, before you were working with Umpqua, you were, you did some versions where you did some gender twists with some of the main characters, and you've had to do various other kinds of shifts because of cost and production value and so forth. So you've always been very innovative in the way that you try to adapt this material. But I wonder, what all do you think are the challenges of trying to work with something that people love and know so well?
The big challenge is, I guess making sure you don't make a mistake, right? I know Star Trek pretty well that I'm confident that I'm not going to make a mistake, but my actors don't. Um, and it's, I want them to portray the characters accurately, but I don't want them to give impersonations, right? I don't want our Kirk to give us a William Shatner impersonation, and I don't want our Spock to give us a Leonard Nimoy impersonation, right? Um, I want our actors to be truthful to the character while interpreting it, putting themselves in the character, giving a truthful interpretation, but not mimicking, right? And that's hard to do because, and also the gender switching too, I know kind of gets people a little, I don't care about that. Right? Like, I think we've got pretty much an all female cast, but except the Gorn and DePaul. And, I think they're great and they're doing a great job. And, I think they portray the characters accurately while putting themselves into the performance as well. And I think people will enjoy it.
Do you think people, your actors, are ever? There's the temptation, I would imagine, to try to do a Shatner or something like that, because I mean, part of what makes these characters so iconic is the particular performances of the actors, Nimoy, and Shatner, and so forth, right? And so, are your actors ever tempted to try to do that kind of mimicking?
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
with Trek Theater, with these, right? Like, and I always say, I'm like, this is our interpretation of Star Trek. This isn't, we're not redoing something that's already been done. We're fans, right? It's kind of a, right? It's like I always say it's like a step above cosplay, right? We're we're embodying our characters that we love and telling the story the way we want to tell it, which is, might include a, hey, we're fans too. We're going to put in this little joke that wasn't in the episode, but we think you'll enjoy it. Right. And I've had actors here in this show and with Trek Theater too, who've added funny lines that they think will add. And, yeah, okay, I'll say that. I'll stop there. I
Well,
feel like I'm babbling a little.
No,
well, I can kind of piggyback on that a little bit because I think that, and it's fun working with Chryss because I think Chryss really does extract honest performances out of her actors, and and I think that when you are looking at some of these iconic characters, is is what really is the essence of that character, not. And so, for example, if you take say somebody like Spock, and it's on one hand it's absolutely inseparable from Leonard Nimoy, but on the other hand, that when you start to break down Spock and go, is Spock's gender really part of his essence? Is there more to him than just saying, he's a dude? And I think that's when you tap into it, that there's a difference between looking at Kirk and looking at William Shatner and saying, I'm going to do an impersonation of William Shatner, or are you trying to look for the essence of Kirk that William Shatner provided in his performance?
right.
And I think that there is an interesting line, and that maybe their essence isn't attached to their gender, and maybe it isn't attached to their race, and in many ways that's something that I think Chryss does a good job at pulling out of the performers.
That makes sense. Just as an aside, I think I can understand this. I recently saw a video clip of Chris Pine on Saturday Night Live, and they were doing a Star Trek skit, and he intentionally did an impersonation of William Shatner playing Captain Kirk. And Chris Pine doing an impersonation of William Shatner versus Chris Pine doing Captain Kirk, right, in the Kelvin universe films, it was a very different sort of thing. You could see him how he was really trying to mimic Shatner in SNL, and you can see that his attempt to do Kirk in the Kelvin universe films, the J.J. Abrams films, is actually an authentic take of him trying to be the character, trying to capture that essence. So it's a very interesting sort of thing to see him doing that role in different kinds of modes. And I think it captures that kind of sense that there's an essence to the Kirk character, or any of these characters, that can try to find expression through the embodied actor that you're working with in a way. So that's curious. So the other thing, of course, is that this is a musical, right? So I wanted to ask you, Jason, about your musical inspirations for the songs that you wrote for this. The title of it is Arena Gorn Superstar. So of course you're harking back to Jesus Christ Superstar. What was that part of? Were those songs part of the inspiration for the song? So what
No,
came?
in fact, I
Not
didn't.
at all.
No.
No, because I probably had it written before I knew the title.
Ah,
Uh,
okay, okay.
I
but
don't, the title for me was just like, I, I don't know if I should say this on a recording. We had a Star Trek fundraiser that was like a trivia night, and there was a trivia group called the Gorn Stars, and I'm like, that is the best name for a trivia team, absolutely. And so I was just thinking about Gorn Star, Gorn Arena, Gorn, what's a musical? And I just thought, oh, Arena Gorn Superstar.
Nice.
Nothing to do with Jesus Christ Superstar. I just felt this kind of says it's a musical, and it also says it's about the Gorn, and it also
Right,
says it's about Arena. So
right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what's the music inspiration for this, Jason?
well, there are a lot of things, and again, this goes back to how many decisions that you make that are practical decisions. And so I went to this well with Ponfar a little bit, and the idea of sort of the inspiration as being surf music, and in the most general fashion. And first thing is that it does create a retro vibe to it, because that would be what I would see as kind of period appropriate, as opposed to, say, even looking at something like Jesus Christ Superstar, which is a later 60s take, kind of, a Haight Ashbury sort of more take on it, as opposed to the idea of sort of twangy guitars and surf music and Dwayne Eddy kind of thing that was a little more toward the middle end, and maybe a little more of what Star Trek would have tapped into had it not been using standard themes. And this also, for example, even something as simple as the obligatory Star Trek theme is that you're going to have to do this, but you don't have Alexander's Courage, his big orchestra. So during this time period, you would hear all sorts of things of, guitarists like Billy Strange or Al Caiola doing the theme to the Magnificent Seven, or, the James Bond kind of sound. And there's this whole vibe that people would use to create themes that were larger than life, or, Ventures doing the theme to Hawaii Five-O. So it made it, and it's something that you could do contained, that 3 or 4 musicians can do the part of an entire orchestra. And then the other practical thing was looking for styles that we never know who is going to walk in the door at the audition. And that, so to write things that were technically complicated might be digging a hole that you were never going to get your way out of. So a lot of these things just played into going, this is perfect. It's retro music. You can easily be portable. Doesn't require a lot of people to do it. It can be authentic. And it opened up just a lot of creative possibilities. So that kind of in the broadest strokes were that you can get, there is even sort of a tradition of instrumentals out of that period that were even themed on outer space.
Right, right. So
Things like that.
Yeah, is the music for this live, or is it
Oh,
pre-recorded?
yes.
Oh, it's so you actually have a band that's also
Yes.
going to be okay.
It's for real. It's for real.
What are the musicians in the band?
Well, it's just guitar, keyboard, and the keyboard is kicking bass as well. In fact, we have a retro keyboard bass that would be similar to the same one that would have been used in the Doors, and then and drummer and percussion, and that's it.
Wow, that's very cool. Well, it's talking about like adapting, the episode, right? There's so many the music from the original series is also so iconic. There's so many
Oh,
different
it's
kinds of
totally.
clips that come out. Are you trying to capture beyond just the sort of the original opening theme? Are you trying to capture any of like the fight music or any of those other themes that are so part of the episode?
No, no, not and part of that is the idea that I think it would cheapen it
Mm,
in many ways. To attempt, I mean, these are really classic orchestrations, and you know the orchestrators did such a phenomenal job on it, and so that's one of those things where I didn't go back and listen to them at all. I mean,
mm,
you know, with an eye on I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. That uh, I probably, in fact, looked at something uh, more like out of the period, say like Batman and Nelson Riddle's approach to that. So you would see the fight scenes and hear Batman,
yeah, yeah,
and to do things that were more along that line rather than attempt to do this huge orchestration, you know,
yeah.
that Alexander Courage and all the other orchestrators on that use.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Though I have to admit, I always like, in Star Trek Picard for season one, uh, uh, when I started to see how they adapted various kinds of small riffs from the original series, like the Romulan theme. Whenever the Romulans appear in Picard, they have redone the Romulan theme, and it's a nice touch to sort of, going back to those original songs, and it captures your ear. And so I remember when I first heard the Romulan theme in Picard, I was like, wait a minute, that's from original series. And so I had to go back and just I listened to that theme music on rewind for about an hour, just because it's sort of just buried in my brain from watching so many of those episodes from the first time. But I appreciate the idea of trying to really situate this in a different kind of musical context.
Yeah, and and to not attempt to do things that are probably going to be disappointing at the end of the day.
Right, right. Yeah, that's the other thing is, I mean, that's part of the challenge, right? Is you're trying to do something
Yeah,
new and innovative and fun, without, but that elicits memories of these kinds of things, but without disappointing people, and being, something that disappoints folks who are
right.
fans.
I would say that's kind of analogous to saying that you have a guy that looks just like Kirk,
Hmm.
but yet can't pull the part off. That cannot pull that essence out, and so you're just going to go forget that. Let's get the actor that can portray that essence, and it's kind of the same way with the music that you know you're not going to try and imitate it.
Right, right. So let's talk a little bit about the challenges in doing a performance in the era of COVID. So many different theater troupes and organizations have turned to doing things online and doing various kinds of Zoom theater and so forth. But you all have chosen to try to do this outdoor live theater in the same way that before Trek theater was always live in public spaces, right? So that in that sense, doing that is not new for y'all. But what is new is, that we're a year or more into COVID times now. What were the difficulties in trying to figure out how to do this with COVID restrictions?
I think because of the script, it actually wasn't that difficult. I mean, like I said, the blocking isn't the most exciting blocking ever, but it's easy to just put them on the bridge. They're talking, they're singing, and it works. Um, and we're gonna do it outside. Again, I said the space helmets when the actors in the first scene when actors are getting close. Um, the Gorn wears a mask. We're gonna like sort of spray paint um, squares on the grass, so that squares that are 6 feet apart, just to make sure people space themselves out. Um, the hard part I think is just the beginning where actors are running around, they're getting bombed on, um, and also just the fight scene, right? But the real difficulty I think comes from rehearsing with masks on, because if we rehearse on campus, we have to wear masks on whether or not we are indoors or outdoors. If we're on campus, we have to have masks on, and that's proven to be very difficult. I like to think that when the actors take off the masks for the rehearsal, they're just going to be that much better, because we're making them really articulate. And so without it's whenever you have a limitation, suddenly that limitation comes off, and then you're better than you were before. Like for example, when I was a child, I had braces and I played French horn, and it was very difficult, but I was very good. And then when the braces came off, I was like really good. It's sort of, I feel like that sort of thing, right?
So, what's the capacity for your audience? Like, how many folks are you going to be able to have at each performance?
Well, I think the law is 150. I don't think we're going to bring out that many people at each show. But I haven't really, however many squares we can paint on the grass.
It's a big soccer field.
Yeah, it is a big soccer field, right? So, we can't have more than 150 legally.
Right.
And that's it, right? I think I don't think we'll pull out that many, but we'll cut it. If 150 people show up, we'll cut it off.
Well, let's hope. Well, I wanted to ask. The actors are all Umpqua students. Is that correct?
Some of them are, and some of them are Roseburg community members. So.
Oh, okay. So for the students, did they know Star Trek? Did they know this episode before they auditioned for this, or was this just something cool and new for them to try to do?
Some of them know, some of them knew, some of them didn't. It's kind of a half and half. I had a lot of them are like, my parents love Star Trek, so they know it through their parents. And I have a costumer who's maybe 19 or 20, and I Zoomed with her to talk about her costume design, and she sort of took her camera up, and she had like, it was like Star Trek plates along the wall and all the Star Trek DVDs. And so she's very familiar with Star Trek, even if she's not a Trekkie herself. But about half are familiar and half are not.
Well, that leads me to just one other question I wanted to ask you all. I mean, part of what makes this episode so iconic, of course, is the Gorn and that great costume. So, how are you going about that? Do you have an actual Gorn mask, or did you adapt this in some kind of way? Like, how is that going to look?
So I bought a Gorn mask, an official Star Trek Gorn mask. It is official Star Trek merchandise. Here's the little tag.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
It just happens to be sitting here at my desk. But our costumer is building our actor a muscle suit out of foam. And then she's gonna, so it's like an under muscle suit and then a green bodysuit over that she's gonna paint. And we'll see what happens. She claims it's gonna be better than the costume in the show. So just saying, everyone's got to come out to see the costume then.
Yeah, that's very cool. I mean, I whenever I teach Star Trek and I show that episode, when the Gorn appears, it's always a moment of laughter, just because it's for folks nowadays, the special effects are pretty low budget for that costume. But I personally always loved it. I always thought that the appearance of the Gorn Captain in that first moments, when I remember watching it, was just like so chilling and scary.
Yeah.
And the way that they've sort of remastered his voice in the new episodes adds a sort of real menace to his character. So I've always really loved that costume a lot. I've always wanted to have one, but I've heard that reading about the original actors, that it was an awful experience to wear that suit.
Yeah, I bet. And I'm wondering how our actor will. I told him, we've got the mask. We can alter it so that you can have better vision. And he's like, no, I think this will be great. And I'm like, all right. He doesn't move a lot. He does a lot of, we do some choreography that's punching and then walking back and forth. He doesn't have very he doesn't have very what shall we say, fanciful choreography.
Right. Right. So most of your performances are going to be now at the end of the month in May 2021 in Roseburg. Do you have any hopes of being able to take this anywhere else, or is this going to be just for the spring?
Right now, it's just for the spring. It's always hard to, you know, when a show ends to try to get the actors together again, to the same actors, right? If we did it again, we'd probably have to sort of recast and do some stuff. But I would, when COVID is a little less prevalent, I'd love to, you know, tour this out to some rocky areas.
Well, in
Mhm.
actuality, that I would say as a pitch, that if you have a park space that you want this done, or an outdoor venue, to call us now, because the show is very portable. We basically will have to put it up and strike it every night. So if you're going, gee, wouldn't it be great to have a Saturday afternoon event, uh, now would be the time to get a hold of us, because, as Chryss says, once we sort of get very far past the run of the show, then it becomes increasingly difficult to put it together. However, within the first month, that may be the time to look into it. But it is a portable show, and that's one of the great things about it.
Well, we'll make sure to put your contact info for folks if they want to be able to get a hold of you, perhaps to bring you on out.
Yeah.
Any future plans to do more Star Trek? I mean, I know Chryss, you've been and Jason, I know that you've been doing this now for many years, right? Trek Theater is now what, more than 6 years or so that all began. So this has been a long while. Any future
Yeah, it
plans
has
for
been.
Trek in the park, Trek Theater?
Yeah, Trek Theater. I took the park away when I said, we might want to do some winter shows that aren't in a park.
Right.
Right. I don't know. I left Trek Theater. They're not doing anything this summer because of COVID. We'll just see what happens with them. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. I was hoping they'd do something this summer, but I don't know. We'll wait and see what happens.
Is there stuff that you would like to do artistically that you've always wanted to do? Now you've done 2 musicals, right, in the Star Trek vein. Is there other parts of the Star Trek world that you would like to mine for content?
Oh, I seriously would love to do This Side of Paradise as
Oh,
a play or a musical. Um, that's one of, those are one of the, like, what would I, if I did another, if I went up and, did a Trek Theater show, what would I do? Like, This Side of Paradise would be probably the next TOS one I would want to do.
why does
Or
that speak to you?
I just think I don't know, it's I kind of don't agree with the moral of the story, which is, I always kind of get very frustrated. I'm like, these people are very happy here. Why do they have to take away their happiness,
Mhm.
right? Like they have the spores. It's a great relationship. They have the spores and they're totally healthy, and then the Enterprise comes and they're like, "Oh, well, we have to take you away and get you off these spores because, man was made to struggle," like Kirk says, man was made to
Mhm.
struggle, claw his way. Um, Even though I don't agree with the moral, I just love the show. It's just funny to see Spock all giggly and the
Right.
sport, like they go up to the flower just goes and they're like, what? Oh, right. Like it's, you
Yeah,
know,
some good sort of artistic moments, right? Expressive moments.
right. Yeah. And yeah. And I just like the idea of this sort of colony where everyone's just sort of hopped up on spores and they're
Right.
having a great time, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very cool. Well, if I can ever put in my pitch for an episode that I would love to see as a musical, actually, um, City on the Edge of Forever.
Yes.
I
Oh,
want
yeah.
to see an Edith Keeler song, something very sort of like Les Mis, actually.
That's actually yeah. And if you remember Dana, she directed Space Seed.
Right?
She unfortunately moved to Texas, but before she left, she's like, if I come back, I get to direct City on the Edge of Forever. And I was like, We'll talk about that.
Okay, so you've heard it from two different folks. Someone who's more qualified to think about this than I am, but that would be as an audience member and as a fan of y'all's work for a long time. That I would love to see how you put that together. So, but we'll put some contact information down below for folks to be able to contact you with, as well with some of your performance dates. But Jason, Chryss, I want to thank you for coming and talking to us a little bit about your production, and I hope it goes well. I'll see if I'll make it myself down to Roseburg, but I hope that it works well for your actors, and that you're able to really do a fulfilling performance for everyone. So good luck to y'all.
Great. Thanks, Joseph.
Thank you, Joseph.
And thank you all for sharing your time with us today. If you have any questions or comments, or if you'd like to talk a little bit about the idea of translating Star Trek or sci-fi TV to the stage, leave us some comments down below. You can find the Anarres Project online at our website, theanarresproject.org. You can also find us on the socials, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Thanks for visiting with us, and we hope to see you very soon. Thank you all. Live long and prosper. Good luck.
Thanks.